people in music, I think lots of people would say that the century just gone was really about rhythm. Really, it was the century of rhythmic innovation in music. It's odd that it's sometimes seen as a kind of a poor relation to the other things within music, like melody and harmony. It's almost like there's a hierarchy in the Western aesthetic, musical aesthetic, that goes something like this: melody first, then harmony, and then rhythm. Anyway, tonight we're going to invert this hierarchy, and we're going to talk about rhythm only. And we're going to start with a journey into the music really that is really preoccupied by it. I mean, jazz is a very broad church of music, but whatever one's discipline might be within it, like free jazz or Dixieland or bebop, all jazz musicians would agree that rhythm is really the essential element in what's going on within improvised music.
That I'm doing here is that there's a very clear space in between those notes that I hope you're responding to, you know, that in the sense that, you know where it is, you feel it. You maybe not be thinking about it in that way, but anyway, that's what I did. I played like that because for me rhythm is about two things. Can be explained according to two things. One is division of a space, and the other one is a relationship between this and this. When I'm playing this, there's part of me internally that's doing that. That's what I'm relating to. And there's part of him that's doing that, because he's playing something else. But we've got to both relate to that same thing, or else we don't play together. Now his hi-hat is playing the 2. Do you hear that? 1, 2, 1, 2. And we're kind of playing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. That's a polyrhythm based on a rhythm of 3 and a rhythm of 2 simultaneously. Now, the way that music is thought about rhythmically in Africa, we have a very different way of thinking about it. We think, if you're not a musician, that is, you probably think, God, that's really hard to do. Imagine being able to do 3. It's like splitting your mind. It's like, you know, this thing where you can't do it with the bass on, but you rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time, right? You know, this thing, because you have to split your mind in half and all that. But that's actually not the way it works at all. In fact, it's actually very simple. If you change your psychology, you can do it in a minute. Instead of thinking it as being two things that are competing with each other, we're going to think of it as one thing that is connected to each other. So we're going to think of it as a rhythmic melody. And I'm going to teach you this rhythmic melody, the rhythmic melody of 3 with 2. Here's the first part of the melody. See if you can do this. Ready? Here we go. That's it. Right, that wasn't too hard. Right, that's the first. That's half of it right there. Okay. Here's the second part, the really complex bit, and that is you use left, right, left, or right, left, right. It doesn't really matter, whichever hand you're comfortable with. That's it. That's it. 3 and 2 right there. So here's the first part again, just to remind you. Second part. First part. So listen, thank you very much for listening. This is Tommy Halfrey, Ronan Guilfoyle, myself, Ronan Guilfoyle. Thank you.
May I also just say that it's such a pleasure to be here, obviously in this very exciting and very stimulating environment. I started music at the age of 12, my percussion teacher said, "Evelyn, you are not a percussion player. Evelyn, you are not a musician. Evelyn, you are a sound creator." So whether we take all the musical ingredients of rhythm, of dynamics, or melody, or texture, and so on and so forth, that really, it's almost like presenting food ingredients to a chef. Well, they're not going to create a meal out of just having the individual ingredients. They have to bring all of those elements together. This is the instrument I have to play with. That's one ingredient. This is the instrument I have to play with. That's another ingredient. These are another set of tools that I have. That's another ingredient. The piece of music is another ingredient. I am another ingredient. You are another ingredient. So somehow we've got to bring all of those ingredients together to create not a piece of music, not a percussion player, but a sound experience. So there really is a difference there, because every time you approach your instrument, I'm not going to think to myself, oh, well, I want to play this as though I'm in a cathedral tonight. It's not going to happen. So for me, looking at the room, looking at the environment that I have, I've got to think, well, what's my dynamic range going to be tonight? So I know I can start a piece of music literally barely striking the instrument at all, but it gives the illusion that there's sound there. In an outdoor venue, if I happen to play the same piece, or it's just a bit of a piece, but in an outdoor venue where you're reliant on the elements, nature, of a noisier crowd, of all sorts of things happening, this would be totally inappropriate. So the dynamic range of pianissimo, pianissimo, pianissimo would probably have to go up to and a lot of the dynamic illusion would come through the physical movement itself. So I would give you the impression that I'm actually striking louder or playing more dynamically forceful, when maybe I'm not, but it's this physical illusion, and that's what percussion can do really, really well.
So from 3 and 2 to the limitations, really, of the human being in terms of its performance and endurance around this stuff. We've all experienced the ability of overtly rhythmic music to kind of help us surpass physical barriers in the playing of it, if you've ever been in something like a drum circle, and in the other ways we consume it, particularly through dancing. And this is something, I think, that goes to the heart of cultural experience with music on a kind of a universal level.
Hi, I'm Dr. Marcus Smith from the University of Chichester, part of the Clem Burke Drumming Project, and really enjoying my time in Dublin, meeting up with characters such as Jeremy and Dr. Steve Draper from the University of Gloucestershire, also part of the Clem Burke Drumming Project. What we're hoping to do tonight is to demonstrate the science of drumming. A big question for me, Steve and myself are exercise physiologists, and we're very interested in how the human body is able to cope with the physical demands of performance. So is this an artist or an athlete, or are they actually both? Then you will make your own minds up, and if there's any drummers in the audience, I'm sure you'll have a story to tell about how physically demanding you've found certain gigs or certain performances.
Ex-colleagues we are. We used to work together at the same university and used to work together on the Olympic boxing programme with GB Boxers. I guess my role was more the measurements man. I did my PhD looking at oxygen consumption in middle distance runners, so Marcus kind of got me involved to start making those measurements and quantifying energy expenditure.
So what you're about to see is around about 10 to 12 minutes of drumming according to the design of the programme that we've developed over the last few years. So he's going to play a pattern for 2 minutes. He'll have a tap on the shoulder, we'll then ramp that up to 130, and then he's going to play again. 150, then he's going to go again, 170, 190 if he can go, and then we're going to let him go flat out, free play. So if nothing else, you're going to be entertained, hopefully, for the next 10 to 12 minutes for those of you who are still with me. What we will try and do is to display in real time his heart rate response and his oxygen cost. An interest in here, potentially a bit of anxiety. Oh, we're going to do it. Oh, heart rate's gone up. And so that shows almost a sensitivity. Down here is Jeremy's heart rate. From the data, we estimate he's got a heart rate max of around about 185. Be interesting to see how close he gets to that towards the end of the 10 to 12 minute test. Go, Jeremy! First stage, so that's the end of the first stage, and away we go up to the next one. Rapidly increasing, and we're going.
Basically, we're going quite fast, and then at these rolls that were kind of slow, kind of dragging the beat back.
Yeah,
the heart rate kind of changed there.
Yeah, and it was an issue we had to start with because when we first started taking these measurements, we were letting the drummers play what they liked, but the problem was as they kind of switched down, where you saw kind of dips. So how we now test the drummers is we prescribe the pattern. So the pattern gets faster and faster. So we get the same thing as if we're speeding up a treadmill. We've got the same exercise getting quicker and quicker. So in that way we can create a more genuine kind of tests. Yeah.
Okay, so again we're going to go up again, increasing the click track.
do in kind of my set anyway, or my kind of music. It's almost an accident that I probably do because I'm trying to actually try and kind of, how to say, I kind of rest myself, but not actually slowing down and not changing the actual intensity of the playing.
Hopefully you can see from the data, you know, a heart rate of 191, 192 beats per minute, sustained for a period of time. You can't deny that the physical demands are clearly evident. If you'd imagine that Jeremy perhaps has played for 60 minutes before he gets to that bit, or has been intermittently hitting that time and time again, then as physiologists, that is of real interest to us, because this individual for us is an elite musician, and we should view them the same way as we do with our elite Olympic athletes. For you to be entertained, there's an expectation of performance. If the performance isn't up to your value of that, you won't come. And therefore the profile of the performer will go down. So a fantastic demonstration. Jeremy, really, really grateful for your efforts.
Why percussion?
I think it was just the curiosity of a 12-year-old, you know, when I saw the school orchestra. And, you know, you don't have to have a lot of instruments to be inspired by something, but I quite liked the variety of instruments. Some came rather large and some were very small. So physically the body could interact with the instruments quite differently than always playing or picking up the same instrument in the same way.
The one group of people who do see ourselves more as sound creators rather than as percussionists, or I'm a violinist, or I'm a string player, or I'm a pianist, or I'm a wind player, or a brass player or something. We see ourselves as percussionists, and percussion, what does that mean? Thousands and thousands of different instruments. Really does, you know. So heavens above, you know, we are much more, I think, open-minded as regards to what our tools can actually do.
I position my instruments so that I can see about 3/4 of the orchestra, but perhaps more importantly, that they can see me, so that they don't take it for granted what a particular instrument sounds like. So the movement gives part of that sound. So we've kind of got into a situation with perhaps strings or the piano or voice or something where we think, oh, we know what it sounds like, and we know that piece of music, and this is how we'll play it. Yeah. But of course with percussion, to play a triangle is very different to playing a big bass drum, to playing cymbals, to playing a snare drum, to playing marimba. They're absolutely individual, and so therefore it's extremely important for that visual aid to come through in order to listen.
Now, I've brought along the snare drum just because it really is one of my favourite instruments if I truly had to be stranded on a desert island. And the reason I like it is because it is quite compact. You think, well, how on earth can you play a tune on the snare drum? And of course, my job is, remember, sound creator, musician, percussionist. So I have to think, well, this is as tuneful as that. Well, of course, I have to give the illusion of that. We are thinking of this rhythmic melody, but it's a chance for us to really experience the whole resonance of the instrument and how does that affect the rhythm we play. Now, the composer hasn't actually said where on the drum you should strike. So this is where I'm in my element. I am a sound creator. So I've done the percussion bit. So the drum is at an angle that I'm comfortable with, and the stance is fine, and the hands are working fine. So the percussion element, fine. Musician. Okay, I begin to understand the actual structure of the piece, the actual sentence, the beginning, the middle, and the end, where I'm going, etc., etc. Still not enough. Sound creator, it's a different story.